For the first keynote of the day, it is my pleasure to introduce the speakers from Project Artworks. Creative Director Tim Corrigan and Creative Program Manager Katie Taylor. Project Artworks collaborates with people with complex support needs, their families, and their circles of support to enable authentic expression and self-representation through art making. Let's warmly welcome the speakers, please.
A common misconception about Project Artworks is that our primary focus is about the development of neurodivergent artists. But it is and always has been fundamentally a rights-based organisation.
Here on the slide, we see a group of people in a gallery setting, large-scale paintings hanging behind them. Some people are looking at the camera, some looking off in different directions, some talking to each other.
We are described as a neurodiverse collective of artists and activists, and our work is about relationships. It intersects the deeply unglamorous world of social care and the glamorous world of contemporary art. Project Artworks started as a conversation between two people, artists and co-founders Kate Adams and John Cole.
Here we see two people in a black and white photograph, two adults with a child between them. A man holds a bucket over a pit of sand, and the woman has her hand on the child's shoulder.
Kate questioned the artwork produced by her son in special needs school. Although the class were a very diverse group with very different abilities, the artwork all looked the same. So Kate and John's conversation was about the value of the mark and why it was important for an individual to be represented with integrity and how they could facilitate this. It was about the rights and representation of marginalised people and the start of a person-centred approach, which is at the heart of our organisation.
In this slide, we see a different gallery setting. A large circular painting hangs on the wall in reds, greens, yellows and blues. The left-hand wall is clad with cardboard, and there is a man working on the floor on a large piece of paper, working in a Sharpie pen. Our studio base is in Hastings, on the south coast of England. From our studio, we run a creative programme through which we work with 40 adults with complex support needs. In addition, we run a creative programme for children, young people and their families. Alongside our creative work, we run something called the Support Collective. This is a forum that allows people to come together to share experience, learning and training that's relevant to their lives. It's a group made up of parents, carers, support workers and other specialists. The work that we do in Hastings radiates out internationally and nationally through collaborations with cultural organisations and other partners. In this slide, we see a white cube gallery space. Large abstract paintings hang on the wall. To the left, you can see through to a dark space where a film is being shown. Through our work, we disrupt the entrenched power dynamics of care, art, and inclusion. We question what cultural spaces are for, who they're for, how they can better represent and meet the needs of the communities on their doorsteps. And we want to know how we can use these sorts of spaces as sites for rights-based interventions. As part of our exhibition, we often feature installations, films, and live events to celebrate people on their own terms. And we use these tools as a way to reveal the processes, relationships, and interactions that play out in the studio. By making these relationships visible, we find a way to use art practice and process as a vehicle for social change. This work creates value and visibility around people who are often undervalued and overlooked. Our work started in civic spaces, even though today we often work in cultural ones. And our work also started working with children and young people, as you'll see in the next film, which features one of our co-founders, John Cole and Jamie. And I'll invite users of assistive technology to refer to the film audio description of this section. Could we get some audio for this, please? There's still no sound in that. I'm going to try turning the volume up just in case.
Thomas in the water. Thomas crashing in the water. No, what?
Look at this. What happens if we take this away? What happens if we scrape through here? Ready? 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 Back to orange.
Back to orange.
And then we can cover it up again. What are we going to do? Should we have another colour? One last colour. Look at that.
What about blue?
In this image, we see a large-scale installation with two still images.
So for our first major exhibition called Image Box, we installed these films in civic and public spaces. It was to create visibility of disabled people as active creators and contributors. This approach continues to be developed through our studio programme, where we work with people over years to understand and support and celebrate their unique processes. We use film extensively to support our work, to support people to represent themselves on their own terms. Studio interactions are forms of communication, non-verbal conversations through materials. People's authentic marks are a representation of themselves. This film Tessellate shows the studio processes of artist Sam Smith preparing for a solo exhibition. Film acts as a record of our process, which is perhaps where the art exists for Sam, not in the art object. The film is included as part of the presentation of Sam's work in the exhibition.
Again, there's an audio description available for this if you'd like to use that.
This is a slide which shows some of the works that were installed for the exhibition in the commercial gallery.
And just to explain that this slide shows painted panels that featured in the previous film hanging on a black gallery wall. Again, we're about to go into a film, so please use the audio description if you'd like to.
At project artworks, people may work in different ways. Some may work in a really sensory way. This can be collaborative, immersed in environments, using sound and touch. Some people may work in a very instinctive way, very confident mark making, free from self-conscious restraint. And some follow a more traditional artistic pathway. And any combination of these.
On this slide, you see a full screen, hand-drawn diagram of concentric circles. Each circle has writing in it. At the very centre is the word person. On the outside of the outermost circle, love, being in wild places, and choice in who to live with. We work with circles of support around people to enable autonomous choice making about the factors that affect an individual's life. These are lives that are often made complex by a range of dependencies and the systems that are set up to administer support. We created this sort of diagram, which we call a cosmology of care, as a tool to map and understand this complexity. So in the centre, we have the person, their family and caregivers. In the second circle, the home. In the third circle, various forms of care and support. The fourth circle, financial instruments. The fifth circle, the government departments that administer these systems. And beyond that lie the freedoms of a full life. Each of us lives within such a cosmology. That the administrative systems and the range of dependencies which some people live within make these circles less permeable. Complexity of need often arises simply when someone has intersecting needs which don't conform with the ways that we usually deliver services. This means that professionals are called on to work together in different ways and across different teams that are unusual for them. This complexity and the impact of it is further exacerbated by the complexity of the administrative systems themselves. These systems are also often adversarial. In this slide, we see a cosmology drawing, as featured on the previous slide, hanging on paper, running floor to ceiling in a gallery space. The gallery also includes structures to hold rolls of paperwork and a large abstract mandala painting, like the circular one that we saw earlier in the presentation. Walking alongside people and their circles of support as they navigate the complexity of life is a key part of our practice. The observation, active listening, and open-heartedness of our studio practice have allowed us to collaborate with partners all over the world to make these sorts of drawings over the past couple of years. The cosmology shown here on the slide was produced and displayed as part of Documenta 15 in Germany last year. But what happens when these systems of support break down? This slide shows a cosmology drawing hanging on a different gallery wall, this time against a cardboard-clad wall. So this cosmology was produced and displayed as part of our participation in the Turner Prize, for which we were one of the nominees in 2021. The Turner Prize, being as it is a prize, represents a moment in time, and we had to work very quickly to get our exhibition together. Nevertheless, we felt it was really important to work with people locally to understand what the situation is like for people who live in Coventry, which is about 5 hours away from where we're based to drive. And so we held a series of workshops to connect with people, to make art together, and also to understand how their lives work and to map and display these cosmologies. The third circle here is covered in red writing, capital letters, COVID. And this shows the pervasive impact of COVID-19. In the UK, people with learning disabilities are 4 to 6 times more likely to die of COVID. And 6 out of 10 COVID deaths in the UK are of people with disabilities. These statistics belie systemic failings to support these communities and to meet their needs, as is a statutory requirement, as well as an ethical and moral responsibility. This slide has text, black text on a white background, and perhaps I'll just read the quote, which is from Michael Sandel. From the fact that people are very different, it follows that if we treat them equally, the result must be inequality in their actual position. And the only way to place them in an equal position would be to treat them differently. This is something that we believe and that informs our work day to day. This slide shows a Google map of East London with different coloured markers highlighting sites named Mary Lloyd Day Centre, Hill Green Care and Support, and Hackney TPS referrals, among a range of others. To catalyse systemic change and to respect the specificity of individuals' experiences and of different geographies, we work in deep partnership with whole organisations when we stage collaborations. We work with teams to research what's going on in their area, what activities are available for people with disabilities, what residential settings are there, what care options are available. This not only helps the host organisation to build understanding of what life is like on the ground in their community, but also enables teams to signpost visitors to the exhibition onto these services, building resilience within the community. As well as doing this social care mapping, we conduct hands-on workshops, including whole staff teams, as well as people with lived experience of complex support needs. This increases everyone's understanding of different ways of being in the world, and is a really important part of us enabling host organisations to stage an exhibition with authenticity. This social care map was made as part of the preparations for a solo exhibition for Sharif Pasod, an artist who worked at Project Artworks, which took place in 2020. This slide shows a contemporary gallery building with the cloudy sky in the background. A poster for the Sharif's show, entitled "Have You Ever Had?", that features a self-portrait, is displayed at a large scale on the corner of the building.
So this kind of ambition for people is made possible through long-term trust-based relationships, and we've been working...
3, 2, 1, action!
We've been working with Sharif for a long time. This is an early film project that we ran at his school. Trust enables supported risk-taking, pushing comfort zones, and sometimes people's self-conception of what is possible for them. As an organisation, we make work in response to the lived experience of the people we work with. The In-Transit film collection responded to the cliff-edge moment of transition between education and adult social care. We commissioned filmmakers to produce video portraits of young people in this moment. These films would sit alongside their assessment of care, and the films were a counterpoint to the paper-based information that provided a lot of clinical information about that young person. The paper-based information tended not to focus on other aspects of people's lives and personalities, and we wanted to make films that presented a more poetic portrait of these young people. In this film, Sharif describes what it means to have autism for him from his point of view, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the views of our organisation. So I'm going to run a short clip from the film we made together.
I'm Mr. Sharif Pasod, and I'm very obsessed with weather, hurricanes, tornadoes, cyclones, typhoons, what else? And I'm very obsessed with jobs and hospital programs, drama, amputations, disabled people, and illnesses as well. Obsessions means, and you get too obsessed so much, you get too interested in the same thing, and then you carry on having it in your head all day long. And then when you carry on having it in your head all day long, it starts becoming an obsession. Autism means you can get a bit anxious sometimes. And sometimes if you have really, really severe autism, you can have even more behaviour problems. You can even start to become aggressive and things like that. And you can sometimes hit people. But with mild autism, you tend to laugh at things that are not funny. You tend to laugh at people dying. Autism is what's in your body, and is a condition. It's a disability, and when you have autism, it can make you a little bit anxious sometimes. I've got autism, haven't I? I've got autism too.
In this slide, a framed line drawing of 6 buildings hangs on a white gallery wall, just next to a rack containing multiple rolled works on paper and canvases. There are actually 9 buildings on this slide. Sorry, there's a typo.
One of our principles is to fix environments around people rather than to fix people. When the systems of support around someone break down, especially at times of changing need, this can leave individuals individuals vulnerable to and exposed to being detained in a variety of settings. Shortly after we completed his in-transit film, Sharif was excluded from college and several other settings that he was attending. This was due to what some people described as his challenging behaviour. Sharif makes work about the things that affect his life. The image includes the Selden Centre, an assessment and treatment unit in the UK.
In 2011, a BBC documentary exposed physical and psychological abuse perpetrated upon people with learning disabilities and people displaying what we would call behaviours of distress in assessment and treatment unit called Winterbourne View. This prompted a nationwide review of assessment and treatment units, which found that too many people were staying in them for too long. The review also found that these settings offered poor quality care, poor care planning tailored to people's needs, a lack of activities, and an over-reliance on restraint, which could be physical, chemical, mechanical, or involve solitary confinement. Around 2,000 people with learning disabilities and those who display behaviours of distress are detained in ATUs in the UK at the moment. While these centres are intended as places for short stays to assess and treat at points of real crisis, the average length of time that people with learning disabilities and those displaying behaviours of distress stay in these units is 5.5 years. 72% of the people in those communities in ATUs are on antipsychotic medication, but only 29% of those people have a diagnosis of psychosis. Still, at the end of last year, in the UK, people with learning disabilities, those displaying behaviours of distress, were being restrained at the rate of one person every 12 minutes. This slide shows an invitation card with Sharif's name at the top, and then the exhibition title, Have You Ever Had? Below the titles, the invitation features a self-portrait of Sharif floating in the sea.
Through working with Sharif over years, we built a relationship that enabled him to express himself and to reflect his experience through his work. On the strength of this, Sharif opened his show Autograph in 2020. This landmark moment in his practice was followed just weeks later by the first COVID lockdown in the UK and resulted in the show being shut down.
This slide shows two images. On the left, there is an open box of art materials shown from the top. The contents include used paint sponges, a graphite stick, an image of someone's hands covered in paint, and a series of Sharpie pens. In the right-hand image, a person in a bright jumper waves at the camera, wearing a face mask and hidden partially behind a pile of boxes. Behind the person is a painty studio wall. So when COVID hit, we had to close the studio for a week. We used that time to connect with families by phone, by email, and through visits to homes where we met on doorsteps and waved across huge distances. We reimagined our programme quickly to respond to the needs that we identified through these early conversations. For many of the people that we work with, avoiding the contagion was their top priority, which is why we implemented this programme of art boxes, which was supported by Zooms, outdoor visits where it was safe to do so, phone calls and so on. and our Turner Prize nomination was in part a recognition of this work. In this slide, there are 4 frames showing a Zoom conversation. 3 frames feature people's faces, 1 shows just hands moving in paint. String, paint and canvases sit alongside people's faces in the frames. So this paints a fairly joyful picture of what some of our Zoom sessions were like, and it was really fantastic for all of us to be able to stay in touch. I think it kept a lot of us in better well-being, let's say. However, at the same time, blanket pieces of legislation were introduced, which overlooked personalisation in favour of implementing all-purpose, one-size-fits-all guidance. This included clauses that meant that no second opinion was needed to section someone, which might include detaining them in an assessment and treatment unit. Personalising our approach in this time had to mean prioritising things differently for different people. For some people, the routine of connecting with the studio was vital in stabilising behaviours of distress. And so for Sharif, a young man in robust physical health, we had to continue working with him face-to-face throughout this period. This slide shows a screen grab of a YouTube playlist of Out and About on Lockdown, a series of films.
So, yeah, as Katie said, we continued to work with Sharif during the early months of lockdown. And as with the in-transit film programme, the work grew out of need. The risks for Sharif to remain contained in his house outweighed those risks of him getting COVID. So Out and About on Lockdown was a video diary that documented the weekly connection between myself, Sharif, and a support worker and artist Tom Lapora. And we'll show you a brief clip.
The Prime Minister has announced the most drastic limits to our lives in the UK has ever seen in living. The aim, he says, is to save lives in a time of national
Cool, I haven't seen Al Murray for a while.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, I'm top down. Tom, what the plan is me and Tim are going to go for a walk along Hastings Seafront through Hastings Shopping Centre, right, to the Old Town, right? And then we're going to go Sainsbury's Express, get my lunch at 12, right? A long walk in Hastings Seafront and through Hastings Shopping Centre. I fixed my phone by the way, Tom.
Wow. What was wrong with it?
There was a software issue.
Okay, and take me through the process. What did you do?
There was a problem. It kept pressing different kinds of buttons when I was making a phone call, and it's working now, so...
How did you fix it?
By restoring it, full restore.
Full restore, yeah. Well,
I did it all by myself, so...
well done.
20 out of 10, that's my motto.
I just whizzed through the slides for those who are using audio description. That was an accident. In this slide, there's a white-walled gallery featuring a screen mounted with a film and 2 large paintings, one of a vibrantly coloured foot and the other of Sharif. So working in this way through these films over the course of the pandemic allowed Sharif to be seen and revalued, as our previous work with him had, and as all of our work intends to be seen and revalued as a contributing artist. Off the back of this, Arts Council England has now acquired 3 of Sharif's works. We see this as a meaningful commitment by Arts Council England to reflect neurodivergent experience as part of the fabric of society that this publicly funded organisation is intended to serve. This slide shows a close-up of the foot painting from the previous slide, with a Pantone colour reference card and an archive number. This is Sharif's work, Gangrene, which was acquired by the Arts Council. This slide shows a close-up self-portrait from the gallery. Again, Pantone reference colour card and an archive number. And this is a self-portrait of Sharif.
We hope in the future, this was also acquired by the Arts Council, and we hope in the future that many more people will be enabled to represent themselves and make autonomous decisions about the things that affect their lives. We'll leave you with the final piece acquired by the Arts Council, a film called The Mask, but...
Before we do that, we wanted to share something very briefly of what we've been doing here in Singapore over the last 5 days, because this collaboration is no different. So, thank you hugely to ArtDis for the very generous invitation to attend and to present here. As well as this event, we've been holding a 2-day workshop, and we were asked to increase understanding of making art with a range of people. We worked at the ArtDis site just across the road from the theatre that we're sitting in now, and we invited staff, volunteers and students from ArtDis, as well as friends from other organisations in the local ecosystem. As ever, we learned a lot, especially from the ArtDis students. At the end of the first day's workshop, everyone shared their reflections on the day, and one student in particular spoke with insight that resonated with the tagline of Documenta 15, which was to make friends, not art. We wanted to make space today in the Arts and Disability Forum for that person to represent themselves. And we will invite him to the stage in a moment. Over the past 2 days, we've made new friends through talking, but through playing also, through making art, through getting messy. Often we didn't need to speak. In fact, speaking might have gotten in the way of being together and connecting. So please bear in mind that all forms of communication, including non-speaking ones, are valid and we feel to be celebrated. So please join me in a rousing round of applause for Trevor Lee.
Hang on, 1 second. Yes. Let's see. Hi everyone. My name is Trevor Lee. I'm turning 23 this year, and I'm an artist in training at ArtDis, and I have mild autism. So my style of art mainly revolves around food and desserts, and using acrylic paint on canvas. So I take the names and out of the puns of some foods and turn them into creative paintings, kind of like my Black Forest Gatao. I call this Into the Black Forest. It's inspired by the Black Forest cake. So So I've been with Optus for about, wow, over a decade already. Well, over almost 2 decades to be exact. And it's become kind of like my second home, and everyone there has been like kind of like family to me, especially my art teacher, her teacher Renee Nasir. Yeah, she has been one of my inspirations to be able to do arts and to be able to continue in the arts industry as well. So thank you so much. And thanks to Artists, I've been able to have the chance to make friends with a lot of classmates and teachers from Singapore and all over the world, including in Katie and Tim here. Their workshop over these past few days have been lots of fun and pretty messy as well. Especially we got to do lots of wall painting, not face painting like we saw in the first video. But can I just tell you all something about myself back in the old days about myself. When I was still a kid, and I was the kind of kid who just likes drawing children's TV show characters like Barney the dinosaur, Sesame Street characters, there's High Five, and yeah, I think you all get the idea. But now, thanks to Teacher Renee and also my love of food, I've been able to paint creative and fresh work that's out of my comfort zone and out of the box as well. So it's kind of like over these past few years, my love of food has grown up to my love of painting, especially for my palette. Oh, I don't know whether it's my color palette or my food palette. Well, but either way, I still love them both. Well, so thank you all for this giving me this opportunity to present myself and to showcase my work to you all. It's been a one tasty and a memorable journey. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thank you.
I just want to briefly take this opportunity to describe a painting that Trevor has put on this slide. How to describe it? You see, there is dark blue sky with different depths of tone, lights and darks, blues. Full moon with a sliver moon highlighted in a lighter shade of pale yellow. Black leaves on the floor, and in the centre of the image, a cake, finely decorated on the top with a circle of cherries, each one of them iced, and a slice has been cut from the cake. Within that, we see rows of trees forming another black forest.
So we'll leave you with the film The Mask.
When I wear the mask, I ask people if they've got diabetes, I ask people if they've got high blood pressure, and if they're the only one who had their leg amputated from gangrene. Ask people if where they live and what type of house they live in and what door number they live at. So I heard that Shreve, he's obsessed with weather, sneezing, hospital programs, gangrene, vomiting, and that's gone. Kids and anoraks, roadblocks, burping, lights, piers, cities, SpongeBob SquarePants. I like going into the toilet, fake sneezing, fake nose blowing, fake hiccuping. truth, he had a fire, is that right, Tim? His shoes got burnt, his weather books got burnt. He rescued his jacket from the fire, his father rescued his jacket from the fire. When my house was on fire as well, I was running up the streets screaming and shouting and crying as well, and Dad said to me as well, I'm sorry, it's alright, I've got my son here, he's autistic, he has autism, he can't help it sometimes. I never want anything, it's easy, but whatever I need, look at my hopes, look at my dreams. And hay fever before?
Yeah.
Any allergies?
Cats.
Any, have you ever had any dreams before, Mark?
Yeah, I have lots of dreams.
What did you have dreams about?
I did a show last night, and then I had a dream last night about the show, in which I was watching the show while I was on stage doing the show at the same time, and I forgot all the words.
Have you ever had any nightmares before that?
Plenty.
Dimples, freckles, watches, the dog on the kettle, Uncle Dax's dimple, Nanny coughing, Nanny sneezing, my mother had to put plaster over her dimple, my grandmother had to get out of the car and cough, then she had to tell me she was going to sneeze specially for me, then they had to change the kettle specially for me as well, they had to cover up the window with a curtain, Grandad had to get rid of the Philips radio.
Discussion titled Bridging Community-Based Engagement to Professional Pathways, Intervening in Complex Cultural Systems. Helming the second panel discussion is moderator Alicia Neal, co-founder of Brand and Artistic Director of Anti-Art Initiatives. Claire Teo, actor, director, singer, lyricist, scriptwriter. Tim Corrigan, creative director, Project Artworks. Roger Lee, parent guardian of performing artist Timothy Lee. And Renee Lee Nasser, visual artist and educator. Let's give them a warm round of applause, please.
Hello everybody, thank you very much for your presence today, and I'm really excited about this panel. So my name is Alicia, got short black hair, I'm dressed in all black and a blue sweater here today. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited about our topic today because I think everyone on this panel comes with very rich lived experiences, and they're extremely embedded in the ecosystem. So I would like to start by just introducing them. So just give me a second. Okay. So we have Tim Corrigan, who we've just heard just now with Katie. So he's an artist filmmaker and the creative director at Project Artworks in the UK. And he has had extensive video production experience, both as a cameraman and editor. And I'm so thankful to also be able to attend their workshop for the last 2 days, where I was really immersed in their practice. And then next we have Mr. Roger Lee, who's the parent guardian of performing artist Timothy Lee, who has also navigated various complex care systems to support his son's journey as an artist. And then next to him, we have Renee Lee Nasser, who's a visual artist herself and an experienced educator who has been with artists for the last 20 years. So that's really a very, very long journey with ArtDis, seeing the transition from very special arts to its rebrand right now in ArtDis. And of course, finally next to me we have Claire Teo, who wears many, many hats. She's an actor, director, singer, lyricist, and scriptwriter, amongst many, many other things, and also a strong advocate for disability. So, so before we jump into the conversation, I just wanted to ground our topic again today. So our topic is bridging community-based engagement to professional pathways, intervening in complex culture systems. So I believe you're here as artists, cultural workers and also caregivers here, we are deeply aware of how important and relevant the voices of deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent communities are. Yet the systems and infrastructures of the society that we live in often do not see these voices as unique, strong, and valuable, just as the way they are. So there's often this need to conform to a certain metric of success, or what the mainstream sees as perfection or ideal. And these communities are often viewed as beneficiaries and in need of support from others. Hence, developing and sustaining the aspirations and professional careers of artists with disabilities require particular interventions, scaffolding, and support systems within our cultural climate. And this is exactly what our speakers here already do in their daily lives. So in this panel, we ask ourselves, what changes are necessary to advance such opportunities, and how do we disrupt the current preconceptions of what people with disabilities can or cannot do, who they are, and how do they want to live? And most importantly, what are some of the successful intervening these folks here have already been doing in their work? So I'm going to actually invite each of the speakers here. They've prepared a little bit in response to the topic. So they will first introduce themselves by audio describing, and then followed by a short response to today's topic. So we'll begin on my right side with Claire, and then we'll go down this way.
Hello everyone, my name is Claire. I'm a visually impaired artist educator. I have long, curly dark brown hair, smiling eyes, a flat nose, and pink lips. Today I'm wearing a denim dress. So, excellence is the quality of being extremely good or outstanding. The mainstream education system is like a competition to see how someone can flourish in a sit-down classroom setting. We are all expected to get A's in our exams, otherwise we are deemed as lousier than others. The special needs education system is more relaxed. I have been teaching in SPED schools for a little over a year now, and the support I've received is tremendous. In a class of 6, a mix of deaf and blind, there are 6 teachers ready to assist, ensure safety, and meet the needs of each individual student. In that, excellence is not a requirement, it's a hope. I think we need to find the balance, because we need excellence in our lives, and more can be done to empower students to find their best selves. Excellence adds to our self-worth. You know, we need to work towards it, we need it to strive. So when I was asking my students what they'd like to be when they grew up, and one deaf and autistic student told me he'd like to be a cleaner, it got me thinking if that was really what he wanted, or what he was told he could expect himself to do and should do. Did he know his options, or were they limited by what his family and the community thought of him and their perceptions of disability? My question is, what defines excellence, and who defines excellence? I think what's lacking in our education, what's lacking in our classrooms, is the flexibility for the students themselves to redefine what excellence means to them, set a benchmark, and for the teachers, the mentors with a vision to guide them towards it and beyond. What if the definition could be determined by identifying strengths and building on them? What if our learning and examinations could be customized to each individual? In my recent experiences working in inclusive settings, the collaborative and process-driven approach has allowed the impossible to be made possible through collaborative access and self-advocacy, and for more flexibility and ownership over the work through a dismantling of hierarchy and combining each individual's strengths. I also feel the need for us to start mentoring more disabled people, to empower them through the arts and shift their mindsets away from the medical and charity model of disability towards more self-advocacy, self-representation, and self-discovery. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Renee. It's spelled R-A-N-A-E, and my sign name is basically this, given to me by one of my students, right? Nase is because I'm in an intercultural marriage, so that goes, right? I am plus size, I have long curly hair, and I think I'm wearing a dress and a coat, sweater, pink. Alright, so with ArtDis, what I do besides teaching the foundation program as well as the artist and training program is that I have supported in terms of the development of the visual arts curriculum. And for the visual arts curriculum, it is very much rooted in the elements of art. But how we have scaffolded is to really put it into the different levels. And the key thing is that for each level, we have 4 learning objectives. So basically, in every term, there's 1. And over, 5 levels, we have a total of 20 learning objectives. So that's what we want to do, is to basically scaffold the learning. It is also important for everybody to know is that when we have this framework, alright, or these learning objectives, it is not something we intend for students to meet every year on the mark. In fact, for all our lessons and our learning objectives, a child or a student, a learner can actually repeat the same learning objective, but with the teacher's expertise. Every time they do it again, it's something different, it's something new. And of course, with the repetition, for many, the confidence is basically increasing because they feel, oh, it is something I'm familiar with, I'm able to execute it well before we move on to the next level, right? So besides the assessment, which we are using to collect data, right, to really find out when teachers are in the classroom, what are the pedagogies they are applying, what are the themes they are looking at the same time, how they're able to use the students as the first person, right? So basically it has to be from the student's point of view, their interests, and from that we actually move on to a rubrics as well as teachers' reflection. So this is basically something that enables us to collect information on how we can move forward in terms of best practices for visual arts education. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everybody. My name is Roger. I'm the parent of Timothy, who has Down syndrome. And like everybody else, I share a bit of my physical attribute. I got black hair, turning white as I grow older, and I wear a black jacket. All right. I'm actually privileged. I am honored to be part of this panel because I'm not an expert. I'm just a parent. I was told to share the journey as a parent for Timothy. As I know, any child, whether disabled or non-disabled, I'm aware that it takes a village to raise a child. Especially for Timothy, who's Down syndrome, it takes more than a village at times. It's pretty challenging, and of course, as what Claire has mentioned, what do we expect of Timothy? Is it excellence? So to us as parents, we feel that as long as he's happy, I think we're happy. But most importantly, we hope to be able to find out his actual interest and to hope that he can go into his pinnacle of excellence, his interest and so on. And I think from young, we find that he's very interested in the arts. And of course, as parents, being one of Down syndrome in the hospital, when people visited us, it's not always a joy. There are some tears, because we're very worried, having a Down syndrome child, people visiting a new father, a new parent, would be very happy. So for us, we are pretty shocked, So, but then over the years, we discovered his love for singing and so on and so forth, And Claire earlier mentioned one of his students asked, what you want to become? He said he wanted to become a cleaner. So along the way, when we asked Timothy what he wants to become, he says that he wants to become a performer. You know, so I think, wow, you know, that's pretty exciting for Timothy. All right. So over the years, what we've gone through is this. You know, earlier on, our guest of honor had mentioned about 2030, the Singapore government have pushed towards what we call inclusive society. I believe our government have done a fair bit, you know. So of course, Timothy have gone through the special school, for example, Mines, Rainbow Center, and so on. All right. And during when he almost going to primary school, we made a decision, say that why not bring him to a normal school, you know, not a special school. So we enrolled him to the naval-based primary school, you know. But it was quite a challenge, you know, not easy because being a special. So we have communication, you know, as what guest of honor mentioned earlier on. What are the communications available? We talked to the principal. The principal has got the same inclusive mindset. They say no problem, enroll to the primary one school, you know, class and so on. But we realized that, you know, having a strategic intention to move into inclusive society, there are many challenges along the way that need to be addressed. Right? Assuming a class of 30 to 40 students, one child, whether Down syndrome or autistic, you know, the autistic child running around, it's very hard for the parents for the teacher to handle. And a lot of schools have got KPI. We all know the KPI of schools is how many % graduate from past PSLE, for example. You know, the principal has got a lot of burden. So to do that is very difficult. So we see some of the special kids, you know, drop out, you know, primary 1, primary 2. So what we did is we have a lot of dialogue, a lot of dimension with the principal, and we find that, oh, perhaps a shadow teacher will help. So Timothy have a shadow teacher approved by the school to guide him through the 6 years of primary school. That helps a lot. So he nurtured a lot, he grown a lot, you know, over the years. And then after primary school, he's supposed to go to secondary. So we enroll him to another so-called normal school, but it's a Northlight school. You know, in Singapore, Northlight school is for not a very nice term for people who failed their primary 6, you know, to go to Northlight. But in Northlight, he excelled. He enjoyed the school very much, and so on. Then after Northlight, you know, what's next, you know? So we thought, hey, not sure where to go, you know. So perhaps, you know, join an institution that can groom his arts. And we enrolled him to VSA, Very Special Arts, and now, of course, he's an artist. So over here in artists, he has developed the passion for artists because VSA artists, you know, have got institution programs to groom performers, and that's where he enjoys so much. You know, he played the cajon, he performed in front of ministers, you know, prime ministers, president, you know, so he's really having a good time. And of course, we are really grateful through that background. You know, the background is very important, environment. I guess all of you know about Steve Jobs. You know, Steve Jobs says that when he was young, he enrolled to a community college that do topography, calligraphy. And because of that, he designed Apple to have beautiful fonts. So I guess his background, you know, in the school groomed him a little bit in terms of ability to grasp the arts. And when he enrolled in artists, he's able to grasp a lot of the areas. And then there's opportunity that arises. Opportunity is, you know, the artist guy said, hey, you know, there's an audition. MediaCorp wants to audition an actor. Okay. The actor had to be a Down syndrome actor. Oh, okay. So we thought that, you know, in MediaCorp, he wanted to act as an autistic person, no problem. You know, Justin Hoffman, Dustin Hoffman, right, did a very good show on what we call how to act as an autistic person very well. But the director of MediaCorp said that we cannot have someone act as a Down syndrome because the DNA of a Down syndrome, the face of the look Down syndrome, so actor cannot change unless you go to Korea to have facelift. Otherwise, you cannot become a Down syndrome. So he was auditioned a couple of people. Eventually, Timothy was selected. all right? But it was very difficult, very tough, because we are very worried about, number one, discipline. You know, to wake up very early. Sometimes the shoot can start at 5 a.m. All right, and then after that, not only that, remembering the lines. Even for myself, for normal people, remembering the lines is very, very difficult. So it was pretty challenging, and of course the patience of the other actors. You know, when you perform, if sometimes you forget the lines, the other actors must forgive it, so they take our time. Otherwise, there's a lot of NG. You know, keep on wasting our time. So the journey has been very fruitful because of the foundation he has, all right, through the schools and also through VSA artists. So all this helps him a lot to undergo a lot of such challenges. So I think the theme of this is, of this particular panel is what's next. We hope that the ability for him to practice and become a professional himself, so that eventually he's 23 years old already, so when he reaches 25, 26, that he's able to be employed as an artist. And that would be a joy to us, and also a contribution to society. And that will reflect our government's strategic motion of inclusive society, whereby every one of the disabled artists will be able to perform and become a professional and make a living for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tim Corrigan. I'm Creative Director at Project Artworks. I'm quite tall, wearing all black, I've got white trainers and brown hair. So we run a studio program for neurodivergent artists from our base in Hastings, and it's a very bespoke program, so we work with lots of different people in lots of different ways, but I guess 90%, 80% of the people we work with don't identify as artists. So for them, the idea of sort of professional pathway looks very different to what you might consider a kind of traditional artistic professional pathway. But that doesn't mean to say that the work, they don't make work which is sought after by galleries or that can be placed within that professional context, I guess. And I guess that it's something to do about how the work's created, the facilitation of that, but also the positioning of their work and through the use of really high quality materials. And I think when you see people making work in a very honest and open way, free from self-conscious restraint, the work itself reflects its truth, and I think that that's a really powerful thing when you're making art objects. So yes, we do create art objects, but as I was talking earlier, we don't position ourselves to develop professional pathways for neurodivergent artists. We're much more a right-based organisation. But we still want to present this work within cultural spaces. So we see cultural spaces as vehicles for social change. So we look at galleries and we question, who they're for, who's using them, and why perhaps they're not reflective more within their programming and audiences of more marginalised groups and different diverse groups, because they only really represent a very small amount of people. Usually that is changing. So the way we do that is that we work collaboratively directly with other galleries and organisations. So we work with institutions like the Tate or whoever it may be, and what we do is we map the social care sector around that organisation, and we create environments within that space that allow these conversations to happen. So, for instance, we work with the whole staff teams of cultural organisations to get to see them, to value the work that we're doing, but also to raise awareness and understanding around neurodiversity and how to actually reach and connect with audiences. So this is the work that we do with cultural organisations, and actually the fantastic work that's created in the studio, because there is some amazing work created, and although a lot of it is created without the ambition for kind of a professional or therefore economic kind of return, but it has has this power. So when you're speaking to curators and arts institutions, you need to talk the language of those spaces, which is these art objects. So our exhibitions that we have, which sometimes we have solo exhibitions for an individual artist, but quite often our more organisational exhibitions are sort of installations which are sort of layers of understanding around neurodiversity. And actually what gets us through the door of these cultural institutions are these fantastic works that are made by people. And so we often think of them as the sort of Trojan horse within which we kind of get our conversation, the conversation that we want to have into the gallery. Because actually for us the work is both the kind of traditional art making processes such as painting and filmmaking that you've seen a bit of today, but it's actually, we don't separate out the sort of rights-based work from the creative output. We see it all as this kind of creative output. We kind of align ourselves with a more expanded concept of art, which embraces kind of work being creative with the forces that affect your life in order to create change. So that's very much how we position the work with Project Artwork. So I'll hand back to you because I know we're tight for time.
Thank you, Tim. I think there's so much in there and everything is intersecting. I wanted to go back to this idea of the education system, which actually all four speakers spoke about. You know, Tim, just now you talked about how at Project Artworks you're really trying to also dismantle this idea of what we see as certification or professionalizing in a certain way. But I think there's also other areas in disability where this is actually a gap as well. So I would love the speakers to speak to that, about our current gaps in our education system and how each of you are actually intervening in it. So maybe I'll start with Claire, because I've known Claire since she was 15, so we've actually journeyed a lot you know, in the secondary school system, and that was actually what drew me to working with her. You know, seeing that even within the mainstream education, inclusive education system, something like art is still seen in very traditional ways, right? So for someone with visual impairment, actually the way you might approach art is completely different. But yet our O-level settings is still very much vision dominated. So I would love maybe Claire to talk a little bit about how you've been intervening in the education system, you know, particularly when you entered the tertiary realm, where you were pursuing a diploma in performing arts. Yeah, so what did you do there?
You know, being the first visually impaired person to go to LaSalle College of the Arts Diploma in Performance, there was a lot of things I had to negotiate and navigate through. It started off as my program leader saying, okay, your mom will accompany you in class, and I was like, that's not good. So it became asking my friends for help after class. Many times I would be put aside because the teachers needed to take care of the rest of the students as well. So many times I had to teach my teachers and my friends to help me. Things like using the tactile approach, being a good sighted guide, and how I could still be on stage using different methods, like counting my footsteps, on sensing the light through heat.
And thank you, Claire. So I think there was a lot of direct negotiation you had to do with the community in the classroom space, right? And maybe Renee, you could speak to that in the sped school system, because early on you touched on how actually there's a lot of fluidity and flow that has already been innovating in that space. So why do you think there's not enough of such fluidity that's present in our landscape, especially for other schools?
For me personally, I think it has got to do with teachers training. Teachers who will be trained in arts making, right? Observing the arts making process. Or on the flip side, artists who are actually trained in pedagogy to actually manage in the classroom setting. So it's actually, I would say, two-sided. And it is very often we won't have a situation where you have, I would say not very often, you have a sped school teacher who is very comfortable in the arts, because if she is or he is, he will already be assigned as a school arts teacher, visual arts teacher in that sense. So a teacher's training is one, or in other words, I would also say it would be to break down the mindset that there has to be an ideal art piece, that every piece a child does, it has to have the same outcome. That's very important, because when we look at art making processes, like Tim has shown on Sharif, it's really about exploring from the person's self, letting them lead in the story, the theme, the approach that they like. So breaking that mindset, or letting the teachers be at ease that, oh, this is okay, right? It's not going to be at the end of the world kind of situation. Yeah, this is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, from my point of view, I guess through Timothy's journey, for example, the class size. Most of the normal schools have got bigger class size. For I guess special children, the class size it's going to be small. 4 or 5 people, whereby because everyone is different. So we find that, for example, when Tim enrolled into the Artist Beyond Display program, the 2-year program, the class is pretty small, and there's a lot of communication dialogue with the teachers. But with too big a class size, it's kind of hard through his journey. So I think smaller class size and also ability to slowly have the students involved to involve in training. For example, having an opportunity, for example, in the dance segment, Timothy will be part of that program to help out the trainer to train others. That kind of mentorship ability to slowly get him involved in training will give him higher level of responsibility and so on. So the curriculum is very difficult to be fixed, I think. Based on Timothy's journey, it has to be customized, to every individual. They'll be good, but not many schools can have that luxury because of budget, because of teachers, and so on and so forth. However, in the Beyond Display training program is pretty good because the teachers are very professional in his own right, and he picked up quite fair bit. This my input. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tim, would you like to talk a little bit about this really radical shift in thinking about education?
Yeah, so I guess it's really difficult to fit some people into the sort of social constructs that we create, like education, and for some people that's not going to work. I mean, although we do work with people who actually aspire to achieving and attaining qualification of some sort, so we work a lot with, there's an accreditation in the UK called Arts Award, and we've worked close, it's an Arts Council accreditation, and it's for young people, mainstream schools, to achieve certain levels of accreditation, which then can lead on to further education. And so we work closely with them to adapt and adjust the way in which it's evaluated in order to fit in with some of the people that we work with. So there's that, and I think that way of kind of recording and rethinking how you articulate how someone's learning is really key to allowing them or for them to be able to achieve certain qualifications. But for instance, so this isn't a qualification, but for Sharif's film, The Mask, was a commission for a TV company. And so to credit Sharif as a writer-director, we had to reframe kind of what that meant in terms of, what's traditionally thought of. So for Sharif to write that film, what that actually meant in practical reality was that we recorded the whole, this whole monologue in one take in the studio, and it was about 3 hours long. And then we decided with him what he decided, what elements he wanted to keep in. Some we couldn't actually keep in, but he wanted to keep some elements, he decided which elements to keep in. And that's how and then that for him was writing the script, right? So it's actually just to kind of think about how can you be creative with the parameters with how we describe things how we articulate how someone kind of has contributed, because people contribute all the time. And it's just a way of kind of recording and acknowledging that outside of these sort of frameworks of education. We're lucky enough as an organisation not to have to adhere to curriculums, and we kind of can kind of write our own rules in that way. So we're not sitting within an education placement, and I understand it must be really frustrating and difficult sometimes when you're having to work with a curriculum to achieve certain things which actually are just not relevant to people. But then how do you celebrate these amazing achievements and attainments that people do make? So I think it's more about how we reframe that to kind of slot into something if that's required, and if not, just to work outside it.
Yeah, so I'm aware that we're run out of time, so I think just to sort of wrap the conversation, maybe I could get each of the speakers to talk a little bit about how you're also shifting public perceptions, you know. So we talked a little bit about the education system, and Tim also spoke about intervening within institutions, right? So if there's anything that you would like to add about how you are also shifting the value systems in disability through your work, I think this is the time to do it. Anybody would like to go first? Yeah, sure. Maybe Claire? Yeah.
Okay, so I was speaking earlier about my time in LaSalle as a student. I went back last year as a director and lecturer of the Engaging Communities module, and I think what was good about that was I could share with the diploma and performance students my journey and the world of the disabled. So I taught them things like audio description and creative captioning. We went through themes like the value of disability leadership, the value of disabled representation, consultation, dialogue, and communication. So many things were covered, and I think this has kind of built a space for more collaborations to take place in the future. I don't expect all my students to go into disability arts, but I think the seeds have been planted, and whatever we went through will manifest some way, somehow in their works, and they will carry it in their future art making.
For myself, I try not to say no to collaboration, especially if it's going to be with the teacher profile, because I believe that, you know, when I get the hands-on experience with them, or they see me in action in the classroom, then we're actually going to have a very strong dialogue. I'm able to understand why sometimes they think the way they do, right? So that's not the art making mind, and they themselves will actually see, oh, this is how I can actually approach it. This is another way. It doesn't have to be drawn a straight line. It has to be a ruler, so to speak. Yeah, so that's for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel that the collaboration is very important. I fully agree. For example, when Timothy get involved with VSA now artists, you know, the kind of stakeholders that is involved will bring each of these artists to another dimension. The ability, the chance for him to act in the MediaCorp show, a 4-year program, you know, gives a lot of emphasis that disabled people have a lot of talents, you know, and of course, for us as parents, you know, we have a lot of fringe benefits. For example, you know, when we go to a hawker that sell popiah, you know, they will give us an extra piece of popiah because the hawker is a fan of Timothy. So, you know, but of course, I wish that he has a fan of a banker. The banker will get some money. so actually, it's fun, you know, it's very enriching as parents. And not as parents, you know, my brother, my sisters, my uncle, my auntie, the whole community, the ecosystem, you know, is being built. So the collaboration to me is the most important right now, you know, and having Timothy get involved with artists gives him that determination and that joy and so on. And of course, just to add on, you know, he went to Japan earlier on, you know, he went to Japan, and as parents, we give him full support. We also follow him to Japan. Every day we watch him just do rehearsing, you know? but it's very fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I just echo what you say about collaboration, because I think that's just so important, and obviously we've been working with lots of organisations for a long time, but it hasn't always been easy to work with them because, you know, our work is all about relationships with individuals, but also with social workers, the cultural sector, but also funders. And I think that what's changed in the last few years is that there's been more of an investment. The Arts Council England have something they call the Creative Case, which was a commitment for all of their national portfolio organisations to work with across diversity, obviously including disability, but race, gender politics, etc. So that's made a real difference actually, because it's meant that actually organisations have to open up both their minds and their doors to diverse programming and audiences. And so we've actually gone from being an organisation that, because actually the work that we've done hasn't changed really in 20 years, it's become more sophisticated maybe, we've got bigger as an organisation, but actually we're kind of doing the same thing, and it's all about the sort of rights and representation of the people that we work with. And so, yeah, so what's changed is there's been this investment from the Arts Council into diversity, which has actually meant that no longer are we kind of sort of knocking on the sort of doors of these temples of culture, but we're actually being invited to work with people because, you know, that we can support people to achieve, you know, we have to be careful because there's danger there of being sort of instrumentalised in order to achieve funding, but where we can, we create you know, relationships with organisations in order to support them and to work better with more diverse communities. So I think like the investment from the Arts Council is a big thing. Sort of obviously the power of the work itself is a big thing, and since our Turner Prize nomination, obviously with Documenta, our profile has been raised a lot, so there's a number of factors that have kind of contributed to us feeling that actually we're really making progress. Obviously there's such a long way to go because of the way in which art is intellectualised, and there's lots of barriers still, of course, but I feel that there has been real change over the past few years. For us as an organisation, we can kind of see that. So yeah, I think investment from Arts Council has been like a huge part in sort of the increased visibility of diverse groups across the sector. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. So I really want to thank our speakers today. I think it was a very rich conversation. There's so much also about time. That's what I'm hearing a lot in that, you know, the journeys that you've been through, it's not been a short journey. Every seed that was planted led to another. And also language, I think that was one big thing, that each of you are also evolving with the sector, and you're also using different ways of speaking to your students, to the institutions. And I think there's also this really strong desire to move away from productivity as a milestone, as a guideline, you know, and also this idea of independence, right? I think it was in there in all of your sharing. How do we move towards interdependence as a society, as a community? Yeah, so I think that's what sustains us, right? Being in this community together. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience, and thanks to our speakers.